Honey, I'll be back in a little while. I'm going fishing. Now let's go fishing with the P. Welcome back to a brand new episode of appTECH Talk. This week, we are going to be talking about social engineering. Stay tuned. The art of social engineering is one of the main reasons that breaches are still happening as much as they are today. Over 85% that we talked about in previous episodes, 85% of breaches happen because of what we call the human element. And we've talked about this various times, but what does that actually mean? Well, social engineering is a big cause of this. Today I'm going to break down social engineering into three categories. The first category is what I would call physical, using your physical presence to social engineer. The second one is going to be from behind a computer, trying to trick someone into answering an email or something like that. And the third one is by using the phone. The first one that I'm going to talk about is physical social engineering. This is probably the one that I have the most passion for because it's the most fun. It's the most 007 type of social engineering that you can do, in my opinion. One example that I'm going to give you is an experience that I had years ago with a physical social engineering experience. So let me just lay it out for you. I got hired by a company to do a social engineering physical assessment and walk into an organization. And this is how it was laid out. My goal was to see if I could infiltrate a company physically by gaining access to get inside, and then to see what I could do once I got inside. So in this particular assessment, I studied the company and I went and I actually bought a box of donuts, actually a couple boxes, and I sat in a parking lot and I watched people walk in and out of this company using doors, and I noticed that they were using badges. So I knew that I couldn't just walk right up to the door and pull the door open. But everybody knows that a guy with donuts is one of the favorite people at the office. So my plan was to walk up to the door right behind someone and kind of look like I'm having trouble holding things. And people are nice by nature, so they wanted to help me out. So I walked up to the door and I was able to say, hey, can you help me out? Yeah, no problem. And they held the door. I was now into the company. I had no visitor badge. I had no badge at all. And I now got straight into the company. Now that I was inside the building, I asked the kind lady who let me in the door if she would mind walking me to the cafeteria and show me where it was at. Because I wanted to be able to go to the cafeteria and put these donuts down to get inside the company even further. Instead of walking me down the hall, she actually was very kind and pointed me in the right direction. She said, if you walk way down the hall and you go to the right, that's the cafeteria. You should be able to find it really easy. And I thought, well, that's really nice. But at the same time, I thought, I have no visitor badge. I got into the building. I'm not a familiar face, but they're letting me in the building now to walk wherever I want to walk. So I walked straight to the cafeteria and I put the donuts down. Once I put the donuts down, I grabbed one myself and I just leaned against the counter and I just stood there and ate some donuts. And my goal was just to listen to the different conversations that people were having. I wasn't necessarily spying at that time, but I was just kind of hanging out. I just wanted to see what the vibe was when there was a potential intruder inside the building. I did have a backpack on because I still have a plan, but right now I'm just hanging out and I'm eating my donut. Not one time did someone ask me who I was, if I needed help, if there was anything that they could do for me. Instead, they just hung out and they talked. After I hung out a while, most of them finished their donut and drank their coffee and went off to their work. And I remembered when I walked down the hall to see this cafeteria that I noticed a whole bunch of cubicles on the right side of me, and most of them were empty. So I took my backpack that I had on and I walked back up the hall the way that I came from, and I still noticed that there were a whole bunch of empty cubicles. So what I did is I sat down at a cubicle, kind of looked around, and these cubicles are high and I'm kind of short. So I sat down at these cubicles, I got my laptop out, there was a network jack in the wall. I didn't have a password to the Wi-Fi or to the wireless access, but I had a little Cat 5 cable and I had my laptop and I plugged right in. And what do you know? I got on the network. Once I got on the network, I fired up my software applications that I ran, and I was able to do a complete scan of the network to see what type of devices and components existed on the network. I was able to enumerate servers and determine all kinds of things that were going on within the network. I've never worked at this company before, but here I am sitting in this cubicle that doesn't look like anybody's using with my laptop. I was there for nearly 2 hours doing a complete reconnaissance of that network. In that amount of time, I was able to do vulnerability scans and determine vulnerabilities that were on their network, document them, and I thought, it's probably time to go. My job here is done. I was able to get inside the building. So I got up and I thought, I wonder if there's any more donuts left. I walked back to the cafeteria, stood there and ate one more donut for about 5 or 6 minutes, and I walked right out the door. In just that amount of time, I was able to walk in undetected with no badge, using the kindness of a person to let me in the door. I was able to do recon, walk around the building a little bit, hang out in the cafeteria, eat a donut, log into their network with the Cat5 jack and laptop that I had, and do a complete vulnerability assessment of their network. That is the physical version of social engineering. There should have been proper controls in place. First of all, one step is they really shouldn't have let me in the building without a badge. Or even if they did, they should have stayed with me until I walked to a receptionist and got a badge or checked myself in. I should have never been let loose inside of the building. Furthermore, once I'm hanging out in the cafeteria or walking around the halls, I'm passing people in the halls. Someone should have flagged me and said, "Hey sir, can I help you? I see you don't have a badge on. Can I take you to where you need to go?" Many companies like to have physical social engineering assessments performed to see just how strong what we call the human firewall is, to see how many people are going to let me in the building, to see if anybody's going to stop me, to see what controls they have in place and how good they actually work. The next type of social engineering that I'm going to talk about is from behind a computer, using tactics that we know of, such as phishing with a P. So to explain what phishing is, it's a tactic that's used to spray emails out there to try to manipulate somebody into clicking your email or fooling them into clicking something so that you can potentially gain access to their computer or their network. One of my favorite methods of a phishing social engineering attack is to use what I call the office dress code policy. What this means is typically people working in an office are very sensitive to what they are allowed and not allowed to wear to work. So I like to send an email out saying that there is a change in dress code policy. And I like to make that email look like it's coming from either their manager or someone in upper management. Because typically when an employee sees that there is a potential change in dress code policy, they're going to click that file. To break this down even further, what I like to do is pack a PDF file with malicious code so that when they are clicking this file to read their change in dress code policy, which now they think they have to wear pink ties and orange pants every day, while they're reading this, I am seeing connections from their computer back to my computer, and now I have full access to their system, and I can do things like listen to the audio on the laptop, I can turn on their webcam, I can log keystrokes, I can do just about anything, including pivoting to things further on their network. The thing to remember is that they click the file inside of the organization and it reached out through the firewall to get to my system. So I didn't have to break through any firewall. All I had to do was break down and manipulate someone to click an email that I sent. Most of the tools that are used for this type of assessment are free. They're called open source tools. And I'm using operating systems such as Kali, which is a Linux operating system that's built for pen testing. And I'm using tools within that called Metasploit to actually pack malicious code into these PDF files. Because of these tools being so easily accessible and getting into the wrong hands, it's extremely important that companies have these types of assessments done to test how vulnerable their employees are. And it's not to get the employees in trouble, but it's to test what, again, we call the human firewall to see just how easily they can be manipulated. And the goal then is to track how many employees actually clicked the email and then to further educate them so that they understand the things to look for when a potential malicious email comes through. One of the next social engineering attacks I'm going to talk about is calling from behind a phone. So when I'm doing a social engineering attack from behind a phone, my goal is to be able to call an employee and manipulate them into giving me certain access or giving me information that they shouldn't necessarily give me. To perform this type of social engineering assessment, I like to do recon. I like to study people because my goal is to call them over the phone and potentially manipulate them into either giving me access to their computer or even giving me information that they shouldn't give me. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to know about them before I call. So just to give you an example, I might call someone in the accounting department that has access to all kinds of financials, and I might call them up and say, hey, we are from your local internet provider. We were told that your internet is slow. We are just troubleshooting 3 to 5 computers to find out if we can do some speed tests. So what I would do then is I would study that person that I'm going to call to find out what some interests are. And then I will throw some gestures in there to maybe build some trust or to just build some conversation while I'm trying to manipulate them. To give you an example, maybe I'm trying to social engineer Tom in accounting. So I looked up Tom on LinkedIn and I looked up Tom on Facebook, and I have gathered information that Tom really likes to go bicycling. So as I'm talking to him and telling him that, hey, if you could just give me some information or help me do a speed test, what I'm going to do is bring up something like, yeah, I'm a little sore because last night I was bicycling. This might just be enough to pique his interest that he might start conversating with me. As he's conversating with me, he starts to loosen his guard or drop his guard a little bit, and then I can say things like, hey, while we're talking, can you go ahead and just punch this link into your browser? So we're talking about bicycling. I've gained trust with him. He's punched this link into his browser, and once he punches the link into his browser, his computer reaches out to mine, and I now have full control. It is important to have these types of assessments done. The calling assessments that are done, it is amazing just how you would never guess that people's kindness could actually be a risk to your company. It is important to have the physical social engineering assessments done so that you can see how easily it is for someone to penetrate your physical infrastructure. And it's also extremely important to have assessments done like phishing to see just how many people can possibly be fooled into clicking a malicious link. These are also reasons why yearly security awareness training is extremely important, because these are the types of things that you can talk about in the yearly training. You can give examples. You can talk about how you can look for things that just don't seem right. If someone walks to a door with a badge that doesn't look right or with no badge at all, talk about how we should approach that. When emails come through about a dress code policy change, but something just doesn't quite look right, how can we teach people to examine that closer before they just click that link? We here at Appalachian Technologies would love to tell you more and teach you more about these social engineering assessments. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for tuning in to appTECH Talk this week. We'll see you next week.